Hello, welcome to the Pacific Northwest Multicultural Readers Series and Film Festival powered by Zoom Catchers. You are here for the Challenge of Color, Colorism, and Casting in Theater and Film. There will be Q&A during today's session. Please use the Q&A chat function to ask your question. At this time, I would like to turn it over to your host, Kamiliah Bush. Kamiliah, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kamiliah Bush, and I am the literary manager at Portland Center Stage. And I am happy to be here moderating this panel. I'm going to bring our panelists up and allow them to introduce themselves. Let's start with Mr. Bill Ray. Bill Ray, can you come on and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is William Ray. Some people call me Bill. I've been in the business for, I guess I should go ahead and say it, about 40 years. Close to 45 years in the business as either as an actor or as a director and teacher also. Getting ready to start teaching actually here in Portland at the Actors Conservatory starting this fall. And I'm still continuing my career. I actually moved back to Oregon, Portland, from Texas back when the pandemic hit. So I came here with 3 jobs and then pandemic took all 3 of them away. So it's been an interesting time, you know. So I'm glad to see this situation going on right now. So I think that's about it.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. And then I'm going to also bring on our second panelist, Julianne Johnson-Weiss. Julianne, can you join us and tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure, I certainly can. Hi, I'm Julianne Johnson-Weiss, and I've been in theater for a long time, doing professional theater for about 38 years, and community theater, and a lot of directing musicals and performances. I'm associate artistic director of Stumptown Stages here in Portland, Oregon, Portland's musical theater company, and we're housed over at the Performing Arts Center in the Winningstad, which I was listening to Bill talk about the fact that the pandemic has affected so many of us, and it's affected us in a way that, you know, the Performing Arts Center is closed down just like the Schnitzer. So we had to, you know, kind of pivot. But, you know, that's what actors do, right? Theater people, we know how to pivot.
If we know how to do it, one thing, we know how to pivot.
That's right. Pivot. That's right. I'm a singer, and I direct the vocal music program and the theater program over at Portland Community College at the Sylvania campus. So it's just been a really great life so far. We'll see how it goes beyond here, but I think we're going to see some positive things happening in our community because just like the stock market crash in '29, they look to us for uplifting and joy and to bring us back to normal and to the center. So hopefully we can do that, but give them a little extra tools to handle who we are in a better way. So I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And our last panelist is Keenan Burgess. Tim, can you join us and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody out there. My name's Tim Keenan Burgess, and I'm the Multimedia Program Director at a local Portland Native American nonprofit called Wisdom of the Elders. I'm also a filmmaker. I've worked on TV film production for about almost 15 years. I'm trying to think of the pertinent information to give out there, and that's good enough. I think we can roll away on that thing.
Sure, that's good enough. And so, audience members, I want to encourage you. You know, we're here to have a conversation about colorism in the arts, and so I would encourage you to use the Q&A function as we talk with any questions that you might have for our panelists. But to get us started off, I want to kind of talk about what brought us here today. The panel description mentions this, and so it was an event in our recent history that we all kind of stopped and had a conversation about, and I want to continue that conversation here. We're in the Heights got very loud criticism for its lack of diversity in skin tone and skin color in its new movie form, and a little bit of one might say whitewashing or sanitizing of the content of the play as well as it turned into the movie. Some of the scenes where a light-skinned person expresses anti-black sentiment to the character Benny was completely cut from the movie, and that appears in the stage play. And so I wonder what your thoughts are about the criticism that this creative team received and the responses to it. We saw a lot of the interviews. Those folks, John Chu, the director, and some of the other folks were just like, we were trying to hire the best people for the job. And it just so happened that all their best people were fair-skinned people. So what do you say about the criticism the film received and the team's response to it? Anybody put an example?
Well, I think that the criticism was legitimate. What was the name of the movie that came out about kings and something that had white actors playing Egyptians and kings? I can't remember the name of it, but and I didn't even watch it. I decided I'm not going to watch this. I mean, not like I don't like the actors who are doing it, but the fact is that there should have been people of color playing those roles, So I decided, well, I'm not going to even watch it. I mean, I usually watch something so I can complain about it legitimately, But I've seen so much of that in my lifetime, like the Queen of Egypt. I mean, it's always played. I mean, the first time I ever saw it was Elizabeth Taylor, and whoever else came along to play it until Halle Berry got a chance to play the role, so years later. But it seems like this situation is continuing to regurgitate, and I keep thinking, okay, when will the system itself lend itself to a legitimate change? And I think that the only legitimate change that we have at this point in time is that we have to decide that we are going to do this, But the problem is that the faces on the dollars don't represent us. Richard Pryor said a long time ago, we need some of that crossover money, meaning white folks' money. and so that's the problem that we face. We're trying to do our own thing through our own lenses and telling our own stories. And I don't think that it's going to change unless we're able to do that. And you're going to continue to see and that's what's going on and what's been going on. So I think that this situation today, even with this festival going on, is a great move towards something more positive for BIPOC personnel.
I also believe that colorism coming to the forefront also means that we have to educate and bring some of the players into the realization that they're living in a dynamic that was not real. Okay, it's people admitting that, oh well, I didn't know that. Well, I don't believe they didn't know it.
No.
In a reality that we set in motion. When I say we, I mean the collective universe set in motion that said, dark skin is bad, light skin is right, white is right, and that we really, if we want to be successful, we have to lighten up. You see it all the time, even in commercials. You have to see, I saw this one ad with Queen Latifah, and I was like, good Lord, they have changed her to a white person, and it happens all the time. When they get advancements, when we all get advancements, somehow then they say, okay, now you've got this structure you need to fit into. So please fit into that. And we buy into it. Why? Because you and I talked about this, about being 30 plus years in the industry, there's a dynamic that was set, before we even came to fruition as actors. And into that dynamic, we stepped into it trying to compete. And there were rules that were already established. So where we are now is we need to get educated and get people educated on the new dynamic. That there is a better way to honor every person that is in the industry. And I think that just is something that we have to do, and it's hard to accept that some of this is ingrained in who we are, but when you're born into it and you think that that's what you're supposed to do. I look at these young people that we teach in school today, and whatever they were born into with the industry as the norms, that's what they think they're aspiring to, So, and then you've got teachers that are perpetuating that, because they don't know. So God, education is like huge. We just all need to get in a room and start talking about what this is and breaking it down, so that everybody can see that that wasn't a reality. That just wasn't real for us, And the gentrification and moving us all out and just diaspora and all that lends itself to it too, not being around each other. So.
Well, I also think we need to, allude to and understand that we as a people can perpetuate that as well. I say that to say, if you remember the movie Spike Lee put out, School Days, that's what that was about. The light skin versus the dark skins, and so we as a people have also perpetuated that, and we need to educate ourselves.
That's right.
That we don't end up doing what they're doing to us.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When I started working at this nonprofit, Wisdom of the Elders, 5 years ago, my main reason I wanted to do the work was purely for representation, just because, like, to make films to show these people, and we had for 6 years until COVID, we had a live television show, one day a month, that ran for all those years, and I was the producer on the show. So it's just constantly putting it out there that showing off, check out these cool native scientists and storytellers, and it's just every month just trying to get that out there. And then the documentaries that I made with Wisdom is the same thing, of just keeping that going out there. I mean, up to now, we still have all the white savior movies just all the time, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's still an accepted and normal thing. But, it's what we're fighting.
Yeah, I want to pull on this thread a little bit that both Bill and Julianne brought up about how we know that it's ingrained, we know that this is a system, but what it means for, like, the creative team of In the Heights, we're all people of color. We have John Chu directing, and he has had criticism for his film Crazy Rich Asians, which set in Singapore, but only featured light-skinned Asian folks in almost the whole movie, not just the prominent roles. And you have Lin-Manuel Miranda, who has also received this criticism before for Hamilton. And so I wonder if there are any thoughts that you all have around what it means to be a person of color in this kind of hot water. Why do you think it happens that there are times that we can't even trust the folks who are supposed to be for us to take care of us in this particular way?
That slavery. Seriously, you have the house Negro, and then you have the ones that work in the field, right? And the divide between the two was set in motion by the slave master, that one would get some sort of perks for being somewhere other than the field, and then the other. And it perpetuates itself, I think, in every culture. Every culture has a hierarchy, has a caste system. That's we don't call it a caste system in the United States, but that's what it is. I look at the fact that many of us in this room right now pictured are Native American, are African American, are Mexican, are Creole, are this and that and the other. But because of how society sets us up, you look at us and then you determine who you think you're talking to. We do that even in our own cultures, where the hierarchy are the ones that are accepted. I look at Japanese and at the Asian culture. The Japanese are lauded for just being, at the high end of the caste system. And then you look at the Vietnamese, and they are placed very low. And so everything just keeps repeating itself if we don't internalize first and try to fix some of those problems too, or maybe simultaneously, because really we don't have the pendulum is swinging. When it starts swinging back, we don't have any time to fix it. So we got to just move quickly. But yeah, I think that it's hard for us. And when I say us, I'm just assuming, I'll just take the assumption that, as African American people, to recognize that the people in the South have a different normal than the people up north. And the people in the East Coast have a different normal than the people in the Midwest. And yet we're all Black people. We're all oppressed by this system because they figured out a way to lump us all together and make it seem like we don't have any diversity within us. We're just Black people and you need to be downgraded and denigrated. So the work is not, it's not, I don't even know how to put this. There's homework for each culture to operate in a new system, and there is collective work that has to happen. And the oppressor needs to be identified for the oppression applied to each group. Okay? Because each group has a reality of what's happening. That's just my opinion, but what do y'all think about that?
Well, I'd like to piggyback on that in a sense that in what you said about each segment of the country has a different outlook on
what it is.
who we are. What I guess I'm trying to say is that I think that because I think that people like us, people in this business,
yes,
that we're different than anybody else outside of us. We think different. We have a different compassion for life, for art, for whatever. And I feel like everywhere I've been in this country, and I've been to a lot of places, that when I run into people who are engaged in this, we all pretty much feel the same way. But I don't think that it's enough of us. That's the point. I don't think it's enough of us, that we need more of us, because I believe that we all believe as we are sitting here right now, that this needs to change, that we need to make a change, and we need to make a difference in that change. Now, I've been living with this for a long time in regards to we being in vogue. Because one minute we're in vogue, and the next minute we're not. Now, all of a sudden, we're back in vogue around the country. How long is that going to last if we ourselves don't gravitate to moving it forward on our own terms? Because maybe in 2 years, 3, we won't be in vogue again by that situation, but we would be ahead if we're doing it ourselves. We don't need to be in vogue by somebody else. We can invoke ourselves. And that's what we have to do. You know, so.
And maybe perpetuating us into power, you know, getting us to a place where we have the clout to make some things happen. And maybe that's the push that we do while this pendulum is swinging.
Yes.
Is get ourselves to a place where, I mean, I started producing shows for myself a long time ago as an entertainer, as a singer, because living here, you know, if you don't start building your own shows and doing your own thing, you will not be able to do what you are sent here to do. You know, they will pigeonhole you and put you into a spot. Like right now, how many phone calls did all of us receive to get on a board of directors, to get a job, to do this and everything, because they needed some black people, people of color. You know what I'm saying? So I love what has happened with indigenous people. Y'all, I love it. Because what you do get pushback. They're like, I'm not, well, I can give you some information, but they're not just really quick to jump in and just be the token, you know, Native American, you know, on a board. And it's like, we got to figure out when it's appropriate for us to do for ourselves, like you said, you know, and get ourselves grounded in who each of us are, you know, I mean, and what we bring to the table, because not every person can bring everything to the table. Each of us have a special quality, you know, and some special gifts that need to be used. So yeah, the pendulum.
We have to deal with a lot of the internal stuff while constantly being just hammered by all the outside force as well. It's rough. I mean, in the Native community, there's so many different levels of, I guess, you know, lateral oppression is what people say now. You know, from you know, how Native are you? If I internalize that, you know, how are you half? Are you full? You know, a lot of Natives are still into that. And then there's the, you know, oh, were you brought up on the res? Oh no, you were brought up in the city. There's that side of it. And then there's the different tribes still that, you know, look down on other tribes and or super envious of other tribes. And, you know, dealing with that is rough internal while constantly being just hammered from the outside by everything else. We're working on it.
And what is colorism in the Native community? You know, because there are Indians. There are folks who, you know, have all kinds of mixes and blends, and it's like, I don't know what that feels like to have somebody just put up there, we need an Indian in casting. You know, we need an American Indian. It's like, hey, well, I hope you're open, because there's a lot of people that can meet that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked on over easily 100, 150 episodes of TV shows, from House Hunters and all kinds of reality shows and stuff. And I would say 99.8% of the time, I'm the only Native behind the camera or in front of the camera. It's just so normal to me now that, you know, over all these years, that's how it is. It's just so damn rare.
Right.
I want to talk about that a little bit too, about the idea, and we have a question in the chat which I will get to after we answer this. But this idea of like the scarcity model, this we like John Chu said, oh well, we were looking for them but we didn't find them, and the best ones happened to be this, and or knowing that a lot of us have in our careers walked into the room and been the only one, as if the rest of us have not been invented yet. What do you feel? How do you feel the scarcity model of casting of work of art seems to come into play when colorism is being discussed? Of like, they're just not out there. When I'm sure all of us could name 10 of us that could do the work off the top of our head. What do you feel about this idea of scarcity?
It's a false premise. It really is. It's the lack of the people in power wanting to search. They want the folks that they're looking for to come to them, right? And yet there's nothing else in our society that perpetuates them, Black people or people of color looking in the places where the power structure is seeking talent. Everything says that is not a safe place. It is not a place where you will thrive. You will not feel supported because of experiences that people have had already. I mean, I had somebody ask me the question about why I didn't audition for a certain director over the past 30 years. And I said, because everything that came to me through the lens of being a Black person said that was not a safe place. And why would I put myself in that position? Except to open the door for somebody else if I knew that they were not going to be slayed, by being a part of a production that was being run by somebody who did not care for them, would not treat them well, would not, no. So it has to be that. I was just talking to the team, the theatrical team at Portland Community College about this, because first of all, I told them, I said, we have to have people of color that are a part of our team, first and foremost, and secondly, then you have to learn what you've been doing that makes it feel unsafe. Like it's not a place where it would even be attractive to folks of color. And that's a big conversation. So I'm not gonna monopolize the conversation, but that's a big y'all come stop by sometime, give me some love. Because it's good people. You see what I mean? Theater people are good people. You see what I mean? 99.9% of the time, they're good people. And how do you get good people to see that they're operating in a bad way? There's.
Well, I mean, that's a tough one. But I think, and I'm not so sure of the legitimacy of all the companies now that are trying to be more engaged in working with us again. So what's the reality of it? Is it because they really believe that it's really time for this change, or they feel like people do once a year, feed and give people food and money at the end of the year, like Christmas or Thanksgiving or something like that, and then they're done for the rest of the year, so until the following year. So they've done their little bit, to get to clear their conscience, So how real is it? That's the question that must be asked. And you're right, Julianne, about placing yourself in a place where you don't feel safe. And you are right. I would say that 98 plus a little bit more of people like us are good people. Bottom line, I mean, we will give of ourselves for our craft. I mean, and then give our heart. And I know that it always comes down though to trust. And do we trust this person to make us look good? You know. But yeah, I think everything what you said is just right on point. But where are we heading? Again, is that question. And how do we get there? That becomes the question. And can we stay on the track without it jumping off and colliding, you know, into some type of disaster? You know, I feel positive. I have to feel positive. I can't feel negative about it, because then I'm living in a space where I don't want to live. You know, so I want to be able to say, okay, as much as I've seen in my lifetime, I mean, we went through some stuff during the pandemic last year, where I decided that I had to let the young people go out there and do the fighting. I've been out there far too often to be out there, you know, and I really love what I did see. I mean, honestly speaking, because here in Portland, they were out there for over 100 days. You had the mothers out there. You had the fathers go out there to protect the mothers. Then you had a new wave, and then you had the veterans went out there to, you know, so you had a full wave of protesting going on in this, you know, about what happened with, you know, with George Floyd. I mean, and for me, in my lifetime, I've never seen that go around the world. That something of that nature could have happened. Finally, the world is seeing what we're going through as a people. You know, I mean, that may be a little bit off the beaten path, but it still is. It coincides with what.
All things are connected. It's true. Tim, you had a response? Yeah.
I was just thinking that I've at least heard a lot more about these things in the past 10 years, thankfully. I mean, you know, from what we were talking about to like Scarlett Johansson getting called out for, you know, and then her response, and so many people like, are you what, you know? And then also with Black Lives Matter and Standing Rock and these things, that pushing that awareness out there, that part of it, I think, is getting clearer to some people. Hopefully it's resonating. Time will tell, I think, on something like this, you know.
Sure, and that statement kind of leads me to the question that's in the chat. An attendee says, "What are your thoughts on colorblind or non-traditional casting in theater and film?" And the follow-up question is, "Have any of you experienced colorism in your careers?" And I think that the Scarlett Johansson idea is really brings up this idea of what is colorblind casting, what is non-traditional casting. We've also heard this term color conscious casting. So what are your thoughts and feelings about that?
Colorblind casting is just what it is. Colorblind casting, you know. What is the actress? I think Broadway actress. She pointed that out a few years back. Essie Peter Murkison talks about that, and then that's what she says. Colorblind casting is just what it is. Colorblind casting, you know, and it is only resonated by the powers to be that makes that decision in the first place. You know, I guess I have fallen in that category in some ways as being cast as a Black actor allowed to play a role that mostly goes to a white actor. So I've had that opportunity over the years, probably more so than most, you know. So was it colorblind casting, or was it my talent that suggested that they felt I could play this role? You know, I don't know. I guess I'll have to go back and ask that individual what they were really thinking when they gave me that opportunity. So, but that's my take on it.
But well, times have changed, you know, so you could ask this question 25 years ago, and that is the system you were operating in, is the fact that all of a sudden there was this like blanket awareness that, oh my goodness, a Black person could actually play this role, even if, it's listed as a Black person for the role. And it didn't happen in every industry. It didn't happen in the film industry. It didn't happen in, it started happening a little bit on stage. And then the film industry followed. And then TV went, oh, well, so we don't have to just do an all Black show. We could do, a show with a multiplicity of people. So depending on what era you operated in, you either had to do that to work, you were glad that there was some opening for you to play parts that you were trained to play. I mean, I took Shakespeare. I was trained in Shakespeare in college. I was trained in musical theater in college, But then you get out to the industry to work, and I'm a choosy, I'm in a commercial with, playing somebody's mom, a little Black kid's mom, and that's kind of what they wanted me to do. Or you get into the place where you come in, you can sing, you can dance, you can act. And then you've caused a problem because you're also dark skinned. So I'm going out for the role of Aida. I can sing it, I can dance it, I can act it. But they need somebody who's light, who's a light-skinned Black person to play it so that it lends itself a little more to Elizabeth Taylor. Or to, somebody that they think is possibly how she looks. So I had to make choices based on what time period it was, in our career and the evolution of the mindset of the industry. Did you want to? Did you know that you were being put into this kind of weird position? Sometimes. When you're in the middle of it, you might not know it until they get to the next evolution of what they want to try and do. And then you go, oh, shoot, this was... Like, I was in Ain't Misbehaving in 83, okay, here in Portland, 85. And it was all the wave. Everybody went crazy because it was an all Black show, fast-paced. Everybody sang, everybody danced, everybody acted, okay? Up north. So yeah, here we are in Oregon. The next time it came around, things have changed, and so we have people complaining about it being an all Black show. Then the next evolution was Oklahoma came. Oklahoma was traditionally an all white show, but now we had an all Black show, but times had changed. So some of the complaints that happened, for those who say we're woke, now, was that it was an all Black show. Why you got all Black people in there? Why couldn't it be a mixed cast? Because the evolution had happened, you see. So there's, it's almost like you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. But you got to pay attention to the trends and know when it's time to push them to a good space, to a great space for us. We did In the Heights. We got pushed back for having a woman. Well, I'm not going to call out everything, but having a woman, people play the parts that may not have been from the Latinx community. Well, we found out later that one of the people they were calling out was from Latinx. But once again, we're in America, and what you see is what you assume, right? And he looked Italian. Like, this person looked Italian. So it's like, what? I don't know. I feel like we need to. I'm a proponent of if you can act it, and especially if it's classical theater. I think I put a qualifier on classical theater. If I'm looking at a Shakespearean part or Moliere or anything like that, and we're casting that, that should be open to anybody, because that's how he wrote all of his work. Cross gender, cross color, whatever.
But we're not expected to know about Moyer.
Correct, because let me tell you, that's what takes me back, right? Because if I get one more person telling me I need to go over Northeast Portland and do an experimental play about Black people, I'm like, that's great. I think we should. But then we should also open up some of these classes for these young actors to know how to do classical theater. Because when they get back to New York, they better know how to do something, because you got to pivot. When you can't sing, you got to dance. When you can't dance, you got to act. When you can't act, you got to direct. You got to choreograph. You got to eat. You know. So I think we're doing a disservice. You know.
Sure. I want to really quickly, and there's another question in the chat, and we'll get to it. But I want to talk about this idea of like the best person for the role, or if you can act it, you can do it. Do you think that do you think that skin color, skin tone plays into the way that we tell and receive stories? Do you think that a dark-skinned person and a light-skinned person playing the same role changes because of who shows up? Because of not just talent, but the image, the looking at a person and saying, this story feels different because this person is telling this story. Do you think that exists?
Who are we talking about in regards to who's making that decision? Are we talking about us or them?
No, we're talking about us. Like, if you are watching a show, if you are watching a play, if you are watching a film, do you think it can change the way that you receive a film based on who is telling that story?
You know, if you got an ounce of Black blood, you're Black. Period. If you remember a movie called Imitation of Life, she tried to move through the world because she was so light that she could, but when it was found out that she was Black, she was Black. And nobody gave a shit after that. She couldn't live in the world no more. When I see talent on stage, I see talent among my people. Who gravitates to this role? You know, whether or not it's a light-skinned Black or a middle-skinned Black, I guess that's where I fit, in the middle, or the dark skin. You know, my family goes from light to dark. Who do I dislike or not like because of their skin pigmentation? We didn't ask for this. We are who we are. So when I go into to do a casting of a show, I'm looking at the talent. I'm looking at who is capable of telling this story that's on this paper that this playwright wants to be discovered. And that's what I see. I see talent. You know, I don't know if this person over here who's lighter can tell the story better than this person over here who's darker. All I know is what I hear and what I see. And that's what I have to go with. You know, that's my thing.
Yeah, but I wonder if there is a responsibility for creators to be conscious of that fact of if there is this idea that maybe, let's say that the talent is equal. Both the light-skinned person and the dark-skinned person are neck and neck. But are we aware of putting, you know, the dark-skinned person in the role of a maid versus the light-skinned person in the role of the ingenue? Do you understand? Does that part of it tell a story? And so, I mean, and to your point, I mean, that's the same argument that John Chu is making, is like, I just saw the best person for the role, and all the best people for the role for him were light-skinned folks. What does that mean? How do we get to that point, and how do we interrogate that further?
I think the issue too is John Chu didn't realize his own prejudices, because within Asian culture there's a prejudice between light and dark-skinned Asians that perpetuates itself if you're not aware. into your choices that you make outside of your culture. So you're asking a loaded question, because there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of different answers to that. um I do believe that the best, see, when you're talking about all black people in the room and everyone's going for a role, I think you can more easily, just as if it were all Native American or all in one setting, you can more easily make a decision based on talent, you know? But when you have two actors who are, one is light and one is dark, and they're going for the one black role in the show, and then you've got everyone else, that's where problems start happening, because that's where prejudice comes in. And if your experience tells you in any way that that dark-skinned person is a threat, you're not gonna go there. And that's the director I'm talking about. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard as a director myself. I don't, in educational theater, I tend to look for the best person's approach to the role, because they got to get the experience, and they may not never get it out there of playing certain roles. I was in Moliere because I was in college. You know what I mean? But finding a director that's that open to giving you the opportunity to hone those skills may not happen again. So you have to, I think in educational theater, I really push the idea of, you got to put the best, whoever's out there just wanting it, and the best person for the role. And because this is the director's job to make whoever you cast work for that part. We're taking away, since everybody all of a sudden has started just watching a video and copying what they see, and that's supposed to be directing. You got a job to do once you cast your people to make it look and feel holistic and like they belong together. And that's so I think also what we're doing is, you asked a good question. I'm gonna leave it alone, but you did ask a good question. You're making me mad because I can't get it all like one little.
Well, that's a tough question. It's a really tough question. And I think, Julianne, you said it earlier, or did you say it, Tim? I'm not sure who said it, that it's about what we're born into sometimes, that we make those decisions. But I don't know if it's, I've just always been fair about how I get to where I need to get to. For instance, I've lost friends because I didn't cast them because they were my friends. I can't cast you because you're my friend if you're not right for the role. I have to be true to what needs to be done. So I don't know if they were really my friends when they stopped being my friends because I couldn't cast you. I'm not going to do that. I cast a person I think is the right person for the role. And I think that's part of my upbringing as my family of my grandmother's family, which was a family of 17, and most of them were women, and I hung around the women who taught me a lot about being a man, and being right and being honest, and so it's what you're born into, I guess, or what you learn as you grow.
You got to be carefully taught. There is a question in the chat that kind of is a part of the conversation we're already having. And I would like to hear a little bit from Tim maybe about this. What do you think? The question is, share your thoughts on the miscasting of Zoe Saldana in the role of Nina Simone. Here we had this very fair-skinned woman playing dark-skinned Nina Simone, and then they decided to put makeup and prosthetics on her to make her look more like Nina. What are your thoughts about that, Tim? And if you would like to kick us off on answering that question.
Um, my thought is that sucks. That's my initial just, it's cringy. It's so cringeworthy to me. It's, did they not see that was a bad decision, I guess, but I don't know. What are y'all's opinion? I'm curious.
Well, I'll ask a follow up to you, Tim. I'll ask a follow up to you. Like, have you seen in your experience this kind of happen to Native folks, where non-Native folks are playing Native folks, or people who weren't actually from that culture, or are made to look more like the folks they're supposed to be representing, and how
that's the entire history of Indians on film, is exactly that. And often somebody who looks Indian, it's like they're from the wrong tribe or wearing the wrong something else in every single TV show, every single film ever made, almost. It's just, they're an Indian. They look like an Indian, throw them in there, only playing the part of the Indian. So it's something that is still going strong to this day. So yeah, I don't know how to make that better, except make my own films and cast people that are representing their people,
I will say, I will piggyback on what Tim said. I thought it was, what was the word that you used?
Cringy.
So I thought that was the worst choice they could have ever made. Now you're talking about casting somebody who's a real person. You're not talking about fiction. You're talking about nonfiction here. And anybody who knows, Simone, would have gone after somebody like, what's my girl? Who's murder? How to Get Away with Murder?
Viola.
Where was Viola? Where was Viola? So, oh yeah, I was like, and you know what? I didn't watch it either.
I didn't either.
I will say that Zoe has spoken recently. I mean, obviously she did the film in the first place, so we're not gonna give her too much cheese on her burger. But she also said, she's spoken recently about how that choice was ill-advised and she shouldn't have done it, and she knows better now. And so I know we're kind of coming to the end of our time here together. So I wanna ask this question about folks like Zoe and people who have done this offense, for the John Chus and Lin-Manuel Mirandas of the world. How do they find ways to not only reconcile but make reparation for the things that they have done? And how do we help Zoe not make that choice again?
That's a choice for her. She has to come to terms with that. I don't know if the pressures of the world made her come out and say what she said. Now, was she legitimate in what she said? Or did she just say it to get the pressure off of her? Is the question. What did she learn from it? And how does she really truly feel about it? I think that's a question that she has to be able to answer herself.
I think ultimately, either of those answers kind of would equal the same thing, in the sense that whether it's sincere or not, she's gonna think twice next damn time because of the kickback. So ultimately, in a way, it doesn't matter. It happened, and that's a good sign, I think, that stuff like that people are getting called out sometimes on these things.
Yeah, I think that sometimes when they, like in the case of Lin-Manuel, I think that, he came by it basically because of what part of his culture he belonged to, and he just didn't he didn't look through the lens. He didn't, so many times you try not to feel. He got caught up in the hype of he being Lin-Manuel, and he forgot that he was Lin-Manuel, a person of color. He forgot that. And that's when you dangle that kind of success in front of people and put them on the white. They actually just put him on the white horse. Our culture, just our society put him on the white horse, and he got access to so much that he forgot. Same thing happened with some of the. I'm not gonna go there, okay? But I'm kind of a political junkie, and I look at the idea that there are some people who can get by with things and other people who can't because of either who they align themselves with or who they are. And you get a pass once. You don't get a pass now, So it's everybody's responsibility to learn more and to grow more and to change and to see things differently. Because we got a whole generation of people who have come into this new way of thinking and looking at the industry. And those are the people that we'll be working with. So we need to get a grip and figure it out. What do we do that's offensive? What are we doing that makes things? Now, Zoe just need to have some of her people around her. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Michael Jackson's dead. He didn't have no people around him that looked like him. That was, like originally from his culture to help him. Certain things have to keep our folk connected to us so they keep us grounded.
Absolutely. Well, we are coming to the end of our time, and I just want to say thank you, Bill and Tim and Julianne, for joining us for this panel. And I will highlight some of the things that we shared here today, and that is what I'm going to take away from this conversation is that, one, this was all made up, that people made this system and we can unmake it and we will. And that the ways that we move forward in unmaking and reshaping is to remind ourselves that we are all human beings and we're all in this together, and that solidarity has to come from within, and that we need to take care of each other and show up for each other in better ways so that our stories can be told with truth and honesty. I really want to thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful day and be well.
Thank you, everybody.
You too.
Take care, y'all.
Be well.
Thank you for attending. This session has concluded. You may now disconnect.